Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Township Mapleton Council meeting on this Tuesday, May the 14th. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers. Right now, if you are able, please do stand for O Canada. Before I get too comfortable here with council's indulgence, we do have a couple of athletic bursaries to hand out today. And to acknowledge these two young fellas, Jackson, you want to come up here? And Logan. Yeah, Logan, you can laugh at your brother, but you're both coming out. I did leave my microphone on so you guys could actually tell everybody. Yeah, okay, in the studio audience, there's your TV over there. Why are you here?
Winning International Silver Stick, OMHA, and OHFs.
Say again, what, you won International Silver Stick.
OMHA.
And?
OHFs.
And you want to explain to people what those are, because you just use letters, and some people might not know what that is.
OMHA is the final hockey tournament, and then OHFs is the winners from all of Canada, or no, all of Ontario, and they face off, and then, yeah.
Okay.
And then we won that.
And you're the winners.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? And what do you got to say about this? What are you here for?
Winning.
What'd you win?
Silver Stick and OMHAs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, second in OHS.
Well,
Pretty
that's
sad.
second, yeah. That's not as good as first, like your brother. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe when you get older, you can, strive to be like him. No. All right, let's have a picture over here, guys. Congratulations. All right, had I known, I would have combed my hair like you guys. Thank you for coming, and we'll let you go. You don't have to stick around anymore. Thanks, guys. Thank you. You're welcome. Hey, declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Moving on to confirmation of minutes. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that the minutes of the Township Mapleton Council meeting held on April 30th, 2024 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? It's carried. We have no matters arising from the minutes, and now we're into the Planning Act. Item 6.1. Going into a public meeting. It's a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application ZBA 2024-08 for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Subject lands are located at Part Lot 8, Parcel B, Concession 5, known as 7705 4th Line. The purpose and effect is to rezone a portion of the property to agricultural, commercial, and recognize reduced setbacks between an existing abattoir and surrounding dwellings. The applicants are proposing to sever the abattoir from the farm parcel. We'll now receive information from the clerk. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, sir. Staff can confirm that property owners, Mapleton staff, agencies were provided with the required notice. Proper on-site postings were completed, and comments were received from GRCA, County of Wellington Roads Department, Source Water Protection, and the County of Wellington Planners. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, our planner, it's up to you to tell us what's going on.
Thank you, Mayor. So this property has been before council a few times. You might all recall the expansion to the existing abattoir over the years. And now the abattoir is currently part of a larger farm. It sits in the front portion of the farm, and then there's an active farm operation in behind it. And the landowner is now coming forward to sever the abattoir lands from the farm parcel. So as a result of that severance, there's some deficiencies with the setbacks to the existing farm buildings on the property and where the abattoir new lot configuration will sit. So they're coming forward to, in anticipation of the consent going forward after this, to just recognize those deficiencies. They're also going to be adding a bit of land to the abattoir land, so they need to rezone that portion that they're adding to a commercial zoning to reflect the current zoning of the abattoir. Also part of the zoning is to allow a commercial zoning requires that there's a setback from any surrounding residences to a commercial use of 400 feet. Right now, the abattoir is within 400 feet of the house that's on the farm, but it's on one parcel now, so that criteria isn't applicable. Once they sever that parcel, they will be in contravention of that 400-foot setback from the adjacent house, because now the farmhouse becomes an adjacent house. So the zoning will also reflect a reduction in that setback, and potentially another house beside it, which is brand new. We have to do the measurement there. There might be a deficiency there that we have to recognize. So all these little deficiencies that they're coming forward will help facilitate the severance of the abattoir from the farm, and they're here to do that. And you'll see later in the agenda the comments for the actual consent are coming forward as well. We have no concerns.
Thank you. Jeff, I believe you're here to speak on behalf of the applicants?
Yes, I am. Jeff Biesman. I'm here to represent Paul and Salima, the owners of the property. And Linda has explained it well, that the abattoir is a separate business. Their intention is for the son to take over the farm, and they'll continue more with the abattoir. And so the main goal here is to separate the two parts. And as a result of the new property line, as explained, we don't meet the setbacks to the budding buildings. In particular, in the one corner, if you saw on the severance sketch, where the will is positioned that serves the abattoir, we felt it would be better for the new parcel to include that well. We could have moved it a little further away from the buildings, but then he'd have to drill a new well for the abattoir. So that's why we kind of set it up that way. It also just right now the abattoir zoning doesn't go immediately to the full right side of the property line when you face it from the road. So now it's going to go right to the right property line as well. I think otherwise it's pretty straightforward, and I'm here to answer any questions or if you have any comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there comments from those in attendance? Please indicate so and state your name and address. We'll first hear from those in support of the zoning applications. Anybody here wishing to speak in support of the zoning application? Anybody here wishing to speak in opposition of the zoning application? Now we'll entertain questions from council. Council, any questions on this application? Councilor Ottens.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a question, assuming this goes through, is approved, does this affect down the road if different people are owning the two different properties and the abattoir wants to expand or the homeowners wish to expand? How does that affect the lack of meeting the MDS requirements?
Linda?
Thank you, Mayor. So commercial uses are exempt from MDS requirements and setbacks because they're also farm businesses, so.
Thank you. Mr. Boozman, you have anything to add to that? You're good? Any other questions? Councilor Martin.
Not a question, just a comment, actually. I think we're super lucky to have a business like this in Mapleton, and it's great to see their success and their expansion over the years. And, you know, as far as succession planning goes, it seems to make good sense. So I think it makes good sense to me.
I will agree with you. Anything else? Thank you. The public meeting is now concluded. I do have the resolution here. Moved by Councillor Tamblin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the planning report regarding ZBA 2024-08, PNS Martin, Part Lot 8, Concession 5, 7705 Fourth Line. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. My brother uses that abattoir, just so you know. When he has his Muscovy ducks, that's where he brings it, all the way from Owen Sound. Next item is under the Planning Act, public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application, ZBA 2024-10, for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Subject lands are located at Part Lot 22, Concession 1, Gore, 7123 Wellington Road, 86. Purpose and effect is to amend the site-specific zoning to allow a general trucking business. The property is currently zoned to allow a business for the pumping and hauling of liquid manure. Mr. Clerk, statutory requirements, please.
Thank you, sir. Staff can confirm that property owners, Mapleton staff, and agencies were provided with the proper notice on time. On-site postings were also completed. Comments were received from County of Wellington Roads Department, Source Water Protection, and the County of Wellington Planning Department, and they're in the agenda package.
Thank you. And from the planner, Linda.
Thank you, Mayor. So this application is to permit the minor expansion of an existing trucking facility on these lands. This property has been occupied by a trucking facility for many, many, many years, and it was initially zoned for trucking, for the hauling of manure for farms. The zoning has been in place for a very long time. I can tell by the number on it, it's an oldie. So it was probably done under previous provincial legislation and previous official plans in a different time. The applicants have come forward to put an addition on their building. They're going to remove a portion of it and then add a small portion on. And during that process, we were made aware that this use is no longer for the hauling of manure, but rather just a general trucking business. And it's been operating like that for over 20 years. So that makes it legal non-conforming. Because of that, they do need a zone amendment to move forward with their application to expand. Under the current provisions, the provincial policies, this use would not be considered a ag-related use, nor would have the previous use been considered an ag-related use actually either, but the zoning is historical, so it's there. The current zoning bylaw, the current official plan does allow municipalities to recognize legal non-conforming uses and uses that are zoned for a use that isn't necessarily in compliance with the official plan, and that's the case here because it is a prime ag area. So it's called status zoning, and what the official plan says is that if an application comes forward to council that is to expand a use that is legal non-conforming, that has zoning that allows the use, or to make a minor change to it, that they have the authority to do that regardless of the provincial policies. So that's, in my opinion, what's happening here. The use isn't changing from what's been happening there for over 20 years. It's a very small trucking use. It's on a small parcel. It's not a farm area. It's surrounded by other small parcels on either side of it. And there's a tree area behind it. So it's already taken out of the agricultural area. And just want to get this right. The other point I wanted to make is that with respect to some of the impacts, in my opinion, the only impacts here would be MDS and any increased traffic. So to address those matters, we have indicated that we have to do an MDS exercise from the surrounding livestock facilities to ensure that it meets MDS, and if not, to come back and deal with that. And the county Roads Division, which is the road authority here on 86, they just would like to see some AM and PM peak counts, traffic counts, to determine whether or not traffic is an issue. And once those matters are dealt with, then we can move forward with an amending bylaw if council's in agreement with that.
Thank you, Linda. Do the owners, Simon and Brenda Brubacher, have comments or further explanation? If you do, just go up to the microphone. Do you have any comments to say anything? Just hit the button there and turn on the microphone, please.
Yes, not a lot to say. Yeah, as far as expansion, we can't expand. We're limited to what we have there. Yeah, we just would like to, the facilities is outdated and old, and I'd like to expand it a little bit and update the facility. That's what we would like.
Thank you. Any comments from those in attendance? We'll first hear from those in support of the zoning amendment. Anybody opposed to the zoning amendment? Questions from council members then? Comments or questions from council? To the applicant or to the planner? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's for the planner. I love it when planners duke it out, and it does seem that there are some contrary opinions around this application. The one from Woolwich seems to be a little bit self-righteous, maybe, to me, considering some nearby businesses on their side of the highway. But could you kind of maybe explain your rationale, Linda, compared to, I know you've done it, like, I understand the legal and non-conforming piece, and you explained that, you know, how that works, but could you maybe explain, you know, your opinion versus that of Woolwich?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So the Township of Woolwich has raised concerns about, first they've indicated that the zoning allows an ag-related use and that the use that's proposed is an industrial use. So in defense of that, that's not, I wouldn't say that's entirely the case. The use, the truck, the manure pumping use, if this property was to apply today for that use, if it was not existent at all, and they were to apply today for that use, they would need a zone amendment, and it would not be supportable. Because whether they're hauling manure or anything else, it's a trucking facility at the end of the day. And that wouldn't be considered a ag-related use at all. So from that perspective, it doesn't meet the policies today. The difference is, as I stated, it is existing and it has been existing for many years, so it is what we call legal non-conforming, and it's removed from the prime ag lands. So we're looking at it with a different lens than if they were coming forward today for it. The other statement is that they've indicated that there's the conversion of that the introduction of an industrial use into the countryside will result in the loss of tillable farmland. But this is a 1 hectare parcel of land. It's already removed from production. There is no farm production happening on that property. And the impact to the surrounding farms, that again is MDS. We've indicated that we have to do that review, so that's legitimate. And then the increasing in urban traffic. So our roads, county roads has indicated they'd like to see some numbers on that too. So they're already looking into that. And that the general industrial uses should be directed to urban areas or settlement areas, which 100%, we agree with that 100%. But as I said, this is an existing use, so that criteria doesn't really kick in this case because it's already there and has been for a long, long time.
Thank you. Further questions? Mr. Bucher, how many vehicles are in and out of your lot on a daily basis?
We park seven vehicles there. Now, some of them, probably 50% of them are gone for most of the week. So, yeah, there'd be 3, 4 in and out every day probably. They would leave early in the morning, come home in the evening, so it's not like they're in and out multiple times.
So not really adding a whole lot of traffic to the road.
No.
Thank you. That's all you, thank you. Anything further? This will conclude the public meeting. Resolution 6.2, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information the planning report regarding ZBA 2024-10, SNB Brubacher, Part Lot 22, Concession 1, Gore 7123, Wellington Road 86. Ask one more time. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you both. Next up is our delegations, and we welcome Murray Short. Please take the stand, Murray. We'll swear you in a moment.
Thank you. All right, so thanks for the opportunity to present the 2023 draft audited financial statements for the township. What I would propose to do is, rather than go through the presentation and the financial statement separately, I'll just go through the presentation. It does cover the main statements, but if there are questions from council regarding anything else in the statements, I'm happy to address those. But as I said, the presentation itself covers most of the primary information, including the primary statements themselves and the graphs that we usually present anyways. So if we could jump to the next slide, please. So just as a quick agenda, we'll have an overview of the audit, just in terms of our audit plan and how that carried out. One slide on the audit report, and then we'll get into the statements themselves as well as the graphs, and then talk about next steps for finalization of the audit and filing of the FIR, which is the financial information return. Next slide, please. So in terms of materiality, what we set for your audit is $560,000. That's a number that we use in terms of determining the type of testing that we need to do, but ultimately allows us to sign off on our audit report where we say that the financial statements are materially correct. That materiality number is what kind of allows us to do that. That is the number that we conveyed in our letter to council back in the fall. As council may recall, we sent a letter for your information about our audit plan, so that was sent in the fall with no significant changes from that audit plan to the completion of the audit over the past few months. We had no significant internal control deficiencies to communicate. The audit process went well, so thank you to your finance staff for that. And we did have just 2 adjusting entries coming out of our audit, so that's pretty low, especially for a township audit with all the complexities related to that. So a very straightforward process. So again, thank you to staff for getting us through the audit. So the audit report itself is a clean audit opinion. You'll see that in the package. Again, I won't go through the financial statements themselves, but it is a clean audit opinion, very consistent with what you would have seen in prior years. We are concluding that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. The audit report is unsigned as of this point. We require council's approval in order to finalize. So that's at the point where we will sign the statements and then forward them to staff for submission on your website and all those sorts of things. So we do require council approval. So at this point, it's in draft, subject to your review and approval. So the statement of financial position, if you're more familiar with the business world, it would be your balance sheet for the township for the year end December 31st, 2023, with comparative numbers from 2022. And if we jump to the next slide, you will see it there. It's a little small on the screen, but just a few highlights. Cash position very comparable to where it was last year. This year about 19.3 million, up slightly from 19.1 the year before. Taxes receivable are up a little higher. We've seen that very consistently across all of our municipalities the last couple of years. They've been creeping up, but you're still, when we get to the graphs, you'll see you're still well within what we'd consider to be low risk and below the average of other municipalities. So not a concern, but tax receivable do seem to be creeping up across many municipalities in our region. In terms of liabilities, deferred revenue is a number of different obligatory reserve funds, your development charges, gas tax, and all those sorts of funds. That balance is up by about 400,000, most notably your development charges up to about 300,000. And then your debentures payable, so you do have a number of loans that have financed previous capital projects and no new loans taken in the year, so the loans are down just by the repayments made over the course of the year. The total net financial assets are up, so basically the liquidity of the municipality is up to about 8.7 million from 6.9 or 7 million last year. So a bit of an increase there coming as a result of the surplus. We also see an increase in the non-financial assets, most notably your tangible capital assets up to just under 60 million from about 58 million the year before. So an increase of about $2 million in your capital assets. So jumping to the next slide, please. This is where I got to jump back and forth between wearing my glasses and not. Cash and cash equivalents. So this is just showing the position, your cash position relative to the cash outflows in the township over the course of the year. So if you take up all the cash that you paid out in terms of expenses, in terms of repayments of capital debt, capital asset additions, you had about 118% of that sitting in cash at the end of the year. That is a bounce back from last year. Last year, 2022, is what I'm referring to when I say last year. You were a little under 100% just because of more significant capital expenditures in 2022. 2023, then we see your cash position bounce back up to about that 118 or 19%. So that is a reasonable cash position to have. Obviously, the bulk of that is in reserves and reserve funds set aside for future purposes. So it's not that you're stockpiling cash. It's kind of good and prudent management to do so. But your cash position is in a reasonable position at the end of the year. The next slide is the taxes receivable one that I mentioned. So you can see that your taxes receivable have crept up a little bit. The green line is the township of Mapleton. The blue line is the average of other municipalities. So what this is looking at is your taxes receivable as a percentage of the total tax that you levy, not just for your own purposes, but also for the county and the school boards. So as that total, your taxes receivable are about 6.6%. Of all of those funds that have been raised. So it's still lower than the average of other municipal clients. It's low compared to what the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing would consider to be low risk, which is 10%. So anything below 10%, and you're fine from their perspective. So at 6.6, although it has crept up a little bit, it's still in a good position in terms of your taxes receivable. So the next slide is your tangible capital assets. So this is your additions. In other words, your investments in infrastructure and other capital assets in the year. And that will fluctuate from year to year, but you can see that on the whole, when compared to your tax revenue, you are investing more, at least over the last 5 years, somewhat more than the average of other municipal clients. This is not a judgment call, and I try to be very careful to say this every time I present. I'm not commenting on how much you should have or how much other municipalities should have spent on. It's just a relative comparison of what you did spend versus what other municipalities did when compared to your tax revenue. Tax revenue is how we normalize for the size of different municipalities. The next slide shows your capital asset additions being the blue bars for each of the last 5 years. The budgeted capital asset additions being the green bars and your amortization being the yellow bars. So a couple things to point out here. You did invest very significantly in capital assets in 2022, so although the number is down somewhat, you're still investing fairly significantly in capital assets throughout each of the 5 years. When we compare that to amortization, you're well above, which we'd hope to see. Amortization is kind of the estimated wear and tear on your assets, so as long as you're investing more than that, that should be a good sign that you're trying to stay on top of your infrastructure needs. Not a perfect comparison, but it does give some indication there anyways. The next slide shows how your capital asset additions were financed. You can see the two shades of green, or the turquoise and green, I guess, are coming from reserves and reserve funds. Not surprisingly, that's where most of your capital investments are coming from, with the purple being capital grants. And then on to the next slide, just highlighting the statement of operations. The next main statement in the financial statements showing the revenues and expenses for the year as compared to budget and as compared to the prior year. And so if we jump to that slide, again, very small numbers on the screen here. I will just point out a couple of things. So total revenues up to about 17.7 million, or sorry, down slightly to 17.7 million, slightly below budget, but very comparable to budget. You do see, in particular, interest donations and other revenue up very significantly. So with rising interest rates, your interest income increased. Tax revenue up by about 7% year over year. Largely due to supplemental taxes being higher than expected. So total revenues at 17.7, expenses at just over 14 million, so you do have an annual surplus of about $3.7 million. That is a little below what we're showing as budgeted, recognizing that council passes a break-even budget based on expenditures, but for financial statement presentation purposes, that's it's showing as a surplus of 4.7 being your budget, just because of the differences between public sector accounting and your budgeting process. If we jump to the next slide, then we see expenditures by department, with obviously the 41% in your transportation services being your largest department, not surprisingly, but the rest of them being very comparable, and we see that on the next slide, where we see the amounts over the last 5 years. And so transportation generally in the 40% range, but generally speaking, the other expenditures fairly comparable year over year. The statement of changes in net financial assets is just after the statement of operations in the financial statements. If we jump to that next slide. The $3.7 million surplus that I mentioned is split into basically two components. 1.9 million of that is basically the kind of changes in your capital assets. So basically that's kind of a portion of your surplus that's attributable to your capital asset activity. Down below that we see the 1.778 million as your increase in net financial assets. That's your kind of cash surplus, if I can put it that way, that increases the net financial assets for the municipality up to that 8.75 million you can see at the bottom there. The last primary statement is the statement of cash flows, highlighting the changes in cash in the year. And if we jump to that slide, I will only point out three numbers on this page. About 2/3 of the way down, you see 5.95 million. That's the positive cash generated from your operating activities. So from all of the operations of the municipality, you're generating positive cash, as you would expect, from raising taxes and so on to cover expenses. On a net basis, you're raising about almost $6 million of cash from operations. Just below that, we have capital activities. So of that $6 million, you're investing in your capital assets and infrastructure. That was on a net basis about $5 million. And then just below that, your financing activities. So you repaid debt to the tune of just under $700,000. So positive cash flow from operations, paying down debt, paying for your capital asset additions, and on a net basis, then your cash increased by just about $288,000. So next is a schedule of accumulated surplus. So this breaks out the entire accumulated surplus for the municipality. And if we jump to that slide, most of the $68 or $69 million accumulated surplus is your investment in capital assets. Not surprisingly, that's your equity in all of the infrastructure and assets the municipality holds. The balance then is a portion attributable to your current funds, so that's just your current surplus from operations of about $425,000, and then your reserves and reserve funds, which total about $17 million, give or take. So that makes up the total of the $68 million in accumulated surplus. The reserve funds that are not included on that last slide are what is in deferred revenue. So those are the obligatory reserve funds. They are shown as a liability, so they are separated out from your discretionary reserves and reserve funds set aside by council. So those deferred revenue amounts are on the next slide. You can see $1.8 million, up from the $1.4 million the year before, largely because of development charges. So at the end of 2022, you had depleted your development charges with new contributions received, some investment income, and less spent out of the development charges. You wound up with about $304,000 there. But you can also see the building reserve fund, gas tax, and recreational land reserve funds, totaling that $1.8 million. And the last graph is our comparison of reserves and reserve funds. So this takes those obligatory reserve funds, adds them to the reserves and reserve funds on the schedule of accumulated surplus. We're looking at all of your reserves and reserve funds collectively here. And you can see that at 195.8%, you're very, very comparable to other municipal clients in terms of what you have set aside in reserves and reserve funds. With that said, and that ties nicely to your cash position being where it was at the end of the year. With that said, again, just to be really cautious about not being misinterpreted, I'm not commenting on what should be in your reserves and reserve funds relative to other municipalities, just saying that what you have is very comparable when you look at it compared to them relative to the size of those municipalities. So that's the graphs. If we jump to the next slide, just have a graph or a slide on next steps. So subject to council's approval, we'll be in a position to finalize the financial statements. We will have management sign our representation letter, which is what gives us authorization to issue the final financial statements, and then with the intention of submitting the financial information return to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in time for the May 31st deadline.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Very comprehensive report. Thank you for that. It's, hey, we're looking pretty good. Not bad at all. Questions from members of council? Seeing that? Great job.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Resolution here, 7.1, moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens. A Township Mapleton Council received for information a delegation of RLB, Chartered Accountants, Murray Short, regarding the Township Mapleton's 2023 financial statements. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, Murray. Thank you. Take care. Move into item 9.1. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council received for information Building Department Report BD 2024-07, dated May 14, 2024, regarding April month end and year to date. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor, to Mayor and Council. So our building permit numbers are steady right now. Where if you look at, we issued 31 permits last month. That's over one a day. Our permit issuance times, typically for the easy permits, pit silos, a lot of the agricultural stuff, it's almost like one day or the day it's applied. Other permits, sometimes like obviously deficiencies, they take a little more time, but we're still issuing the permits literally as fast as we can, which is making the building season almost more consistent instead of the highs and lows, because our builders can only build as so fast, right? Our values are actually down because our permit fees. They haven't been big projects, but it's steady, and I think it's healthy.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions? Comments? Great job once again. All in favor? That's carried. Next up is item 9.2.1, moved by Councillor Tamblin, second by Councillor Otten. The Township Mapleton Council received for information Finance Report FIN 2024-11 dated May 14, 2024, regarding final tax rates for 2024. Any questions on this report? Someone's got to have a question for Heather. It's not often she gets put in the hot seat. Nothing? All right. All in favor? It's carried. Lucky Heather. Moving on to item 9. Hang on a second. Nine point 3.1, moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that the council of the Township of Mapleton support consent application B 29-24 as presented on lands described as Part Lot 5, Concession 2, with the following conditions: that the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. Payment be made of a fee of $370 for a letter of clearance, that a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township, and further, that council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the Planning and Land Division Committee at the County of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Do we have anything to add to this, Linda? No? Good to go. Any questions? Seeing none? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Next one up is 9.3.2, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that the Council of the Township of Mapleton support consent application B 35/24 as presented on lands described as Part Lot 8, Concession 5, with the following conditions: that the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes, that payment be made of a fee of $370 for a letter of clearance, that a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township, that zoning is approved to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton, that the driveway access for the abattoir is modified and upgraded so that truck movement can be accommodated and contained entirely on the severed lands to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton, and further, that council authorizes the Planning and Development Manager to file with the Secretary Treasurer of the Planning and Land Division Committee at the County of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Questions on this one? We had previous discussions. Linda, anything further to add? No? Yes? Yes.
I just want to add, and maybe I don't need to, but I'm going to, that comment about the access in the truck traffic. So it was back when they were adding on to this abattoir, comments were made at that time about trucks lining up on the road to access the abattoir, and a way to resolve that problem was to require them to use the farm lane and come in. They had to upgrade their farm lane to come in around to the back of the abattoir and then exit. So with the severance of these lands, that farm lane is no longer going to be an option. And the current access is just, the road is just open. There's no curbing or anything to define the driveway from the road. So in consultation with Jamie, we came up with that condition to require that as a condition of the consent, that they modify the access into the abattoir to keep it on the abattoir lands and create some curbing and just modify that front entrance so that it's more appropriate for truck traffic. And they've got more room now because they've got the additional land to the west, so they can create, you know, a stacking area there for the trucks. So that's what that's about. Don't know if the owners have seen that condition. It could come up through Land Division, so just so everybody's aware of why we're asking for that.
Thank you, Linda, for the explanation. I hear there's a lot of traffic there, but it's usually too early in the morning that I don't see it. It's, you know, my brother goes there, it's like 5 a.m. and there's a lineup. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to Public Works. 9.41. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin. The Township of Mapleton Council received for information Public Works Report PW 2024-07 dated May 14, 2024 regarding RFP 2023-16 water and wastewater upgrades, and further that Mapleton Council approves a letter of intent between Graham Capital and the Township of Mapleton. Jamie?
Thank you, Mayor Davison and Council. This report's been a long time in the making. Officially started through Council in September of 2023, so staff's been working on it for about 8 months. There's been a lot of hard work gone in by everybody, interviews, RFPs. So basically, we would like to enter into an agreement with Graham Capital. It's just a letter of intent. This is not a financial agreement. If there's any money spent, it has to be agreed upon. And it's basically to get together and see if a project like this, like creating an MSC to help, you know, build our infrastructure, water infrastructure that's required, and have another company help finance that over many, many years. So it's just to move forward, and we'll definitely be bringing back more reports to council once we get the whole process rolling. It's just a procedure that we need to sign an agreement. It's some confidential stuff that we have to keep, and so it was just, I put a lot of attachments for council's review. I just didn't put any of the confidential stuff, the submissions, the answers to the questions. It went back and forth quite a bit. So I just kind of looking forward to this. It's been about 8 months coming, and just look forward and moving forward with this entire project in our water, wastewater. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Questions from members of council on this? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I got a bunch, or a few. How about one? So I'm not sure if this is a Jamie or Manny type of question. So high level. So timing. So we've been down this P3 road before a few years ago. So how does the timing, you know, kind of based on, one could argue the financial climate is worse than it was a few years ago. So as far as timing goes, what's your sense of now versus a couple of years ago as far as the success of this particular project?
Through your worship, well, the timing for us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but we plan on being built out and ready to go for 1300, 26, 27. Obviously, there's always some bumps in the road, but that's the plan. If you remember, the biggest difference between this and back then is back then when we went through the RFP, it was that huge balloon payment at the end that we weren't comfortable with, and that was it was a big red flag for us in council, if you remember correctly, and that's one of the main reasons we didn't go. So it's essentially the same. The financials are better, although the climate was better then. The proposal, in my opinion, is better now. than what it was, and the partnership is better with Graham. So to answer your question, high-level wise, it's that balloon payment that kind of we weren't comfortable with back then versus now there's not, there's none of that being presented.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. So a timing question around the MSC, because that's been something that we've been really, different places are utilizing that particular avenue. So my understanding is it does take a bit of time to create an MSC. How does that impact the timing of this proposal? Is that something we could do parallel to walking alongside, or how would that be addressed?
When we come back to council for final approval, exactly what's going to happen. So, you know, there's EAs that have to be done or completed, but while we're working on a project, it does take about a year to complete. There needs to be a business case, there needs to be an economist to take a look at the numbers and things like that. So we've actually talked to our accountants here to help us with that. But yeah, it can be done in conjunction with, and we can move along. There's not going to be any delay moving forward because of the MSC.
And just to follow up on that, I've had conversations with MPP Matt Ray, and it's something that Manny and I have talked about is going to AMO with, is to talk with the government about skipping the whole MSC process. The reason you have to do that is because it separates the amount of money. Because right now, everything gets pooled into our tax base. So if we borrow money for water, wastewater, it gets put on the amount of borrowing we can do at all. If the government of Ontario would allow to separate those two things out, because water and wastewater is ratepayer based, whereas everything else we do is taxpayer based. So it'd be really good if they would separate that out without making us jump through an MSC. So that is discussions that I've had with the MPP Matt Ray, and he's brought that forward, but it's certainly something that Manny and I are talking about is doing down at AMO, is having that discussion as well. Other questions? Mike, another one?
Yeah, I'll two-parter this one because it's kind of one and the same. No, it's not one and the same, but, so as the attachments that you attached, Jamie, were really fascinating. So first, the operations and maintenance of moving forward seem to be not part of the consideration as far as this partnership goes. Obviously, we've had a really successful agreement moving forward, but why would we not consider that as part of an overall partnership? And then, so that's one kind of parameter that we've set. The other one is on the design side. It does feel like it's a bit unique that the proponent be required to engage with a specific engineering firm. And obviously, again, really successful long-term kind of partnership that we've had with this particular engineering firm. But it does seem like, based on some of the questions back from the proponents or the applicants or whatever we call them, that this was kind of a bit of a question mark for them too. Like, why do we have to engage specifically with this firm? Why not bring our own? I'm assuming these proponents would come with kind of baked-in engineering departments as part of the as part of their companies. So on that, with that lens, so what's the, I guess my question would be like, kind of what's the benefit to the ratepayer once we get to the end of it? Obviously, there's familiarity, and they've designed a lot of our path kind of moving forward, but how do we ensure that that's a benefit? Like, is our guarantee kind of market value on that particular contract? How does that work exactly when we kind of dictate that they need to use one particular firm?
Through you, Mayor Davison, to Councillor Martin. So the whole thing behind this, and I was not here when you guys went through the original one, and the biggest thing for me, and I would hope for anybody, is we maintain control. And control to me is a big thing of controlling our assets. Currently, we have the Ontario Clean Water Agency, and some of the submissions, that came in, they were looking for more of doing the operations and maintenance, which I was really a little nervous on it being taken out of our control. Right now, we have a contract with them. We're comfortable, familiarity, like you'd mentioned with them, and I'm confident with them currently doing what they're doing. And Graham was not really interested in taking over that operations and maintenance. They were more interested in the construction end of it and that financing piece, which what I was looking for. And the second part, the question to the using SEMA as our design. Since I came in fall of 2022, these projects they're on the move. Like we're already designing everything, so it doesn't make sense to, we've gotten so far, they're so familiar again with this. And I'm gonna bring a report to next council meeting on an update on everything and where we are with all our EAs and our preliminary design and where we're gonna be this time next year in 2025, where we're gonna be, where we wanna be in 2026, and they have it all laid out for us. And it's going to be really tough to change gears from having them do all our design work, because we are really, it's been a year and a half, and we've done a lot of footwork. We meet every 2 weeks. We're in discussion. They're fully aware of what our needs are, and I think it would slow down my process of getting everything up and running by the fall of 2026, which is our goal. Yeah, so that's when we talked about running in parallel. So the whole time this is going on, and we're making the agreement and creating the MSC and everything, if we can. I've been working with Murray. I'm waiting on the report from Murray to come back to bring to council. We're working, so I wouldn't want to stop that engineering part now and then try and pick it up again. That would delay us probably. We'd be delayed the whole time. It'd be another year and a half, right? I don't want to work into 2028. I got to retire sometime, so we got to keep rolling. Anyway, so that's just when that's a familiarity with the whole process. Is they're working on it in parallel, is what we're doing to keep everything moving. We have deadlines we want to keep.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, no, it's fine. No, it's important to know that we've been working with SEMA for a number of years. They've been doing a lot of the work in the background. Even back in 2018, we were talking about MMBR back then. And had we had funding, we probably would be already there, but we didn't have funding. Mr. Barron?
I'm not sure this will add any positive to that, but kind of to what Jamie's point, but they already are doing the pumping station. They already are doing the project in Moorfield. They've already done the pilot testing on the MBBR project. So the history there is so vast that we felt it was extremely important for us to keep SEMA.
Now, the question I have sort of tags off of what Councillor Martin had said at one of his first questions. It was on the timing and the financing. There's a lot of money coming out right now from the provincial government and federal government when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to water and wastewater, because they want to get homes built. So they're throwing out a lot of money for municipalities to apply to, and we have applied for the Ontario one at this point in time. I don't know if the federal one's open yet, but we've applied for the Ontario one. So the question for Manny or for Jamie, if we are successful in getting, say, $12 million from the province, how does that impact what we're doing here with this program?
Through your worship, the only thing it's going to do is going to reduce the amount of money that Graham has to invest to get us to the finish line. They're fully aware that we're applying for grants. They're encouraging. It'll be part of the agreements that we put together. So all that will be outlined in the final agreement, that if we do get additional funding from any level of government, it'll basically just come off of the amount that they have to lend us to the township.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you. So so would that be viewed by a proponent as a deterrent potentially? It'd be less capital or less investment, maybe potentially less return. Is that considered a good thing or a bad thing?
Through your worship, I guess it depends how you view it. Knowing the proponents from Graham, I think they would view it as a good thing, as what they're doing with us only maybe adds on to any potential business that they can gain with us as an example. So yeah, for sure, financially, it could maybe not be as ludicrous as they expected, but at the end of the day, they're going to gain business on the other side of it, so.
And just to follow up that further, I know an initial meeting with Graham that we had, Manny, we were told by them that they are really interested, Jamie, you just said it, they're really interested in the building of it. That's what they really want to get into. So I think they'd be still really supportive of Mapleton and what we're doing. Great question, though. Very important to know. They certainly won't gain anything on the financing part. Further questions? Last question. Anybody? All right. I did read this. I'm just going to read the last part. And the Mapleton Council approves a letter of intent between Graham Capital and Township of Mapleton. That's what we're voting on. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to rec. Already going to the microphone. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reid, that Recreation Report REC 2024-03 dated May 14, 2024 regarding the Recreation Department updates be received for information. Amy.
Good evening, Mayor Davidson and Council. Mapleton Recreation wanted to bring forward a little bit of a report of the things that have been happening over the last few months in Mapleton, just to get everyone up to speed. Next slide, please. So, as you're aware, we have our before and after school program at Drayton Heights Public School. It is very busy. It is a sought-after program. We are really looking forward to next year's program as well. Next slide, please. As you can see, you've seen this slide once before. I just think it's important to show that the growth of the program and how well it has been received by the community. Next slide, please. Next year's program is currently full. We do not have room right now. We are generating a wait list as of right now for next year's program at Drayton Heights. So we are really looking forward to what that's going to look like and what that's going to provide for the community. We attended the 2024 Pro Expedition and Trade Show this year. We had the privilege to actually be a speaker at this year's trade show, where we spoke, along with Minto, about our rural before and after school programmings. So we focused on navigating the landscape of rural before and after school programming. Our session was really well attended. We had a lot of interest, a lot of good questions. People were engaged. It was really great to see that there are other communities out there looking to do something similar to what we're doing, and that we are able to show them what a fabulous program we have happening here in Mapleton right now. Not only did we have the opportunity, sorry, can you go back? Thank you. Not only did we have the opportunity while we were there to speak, we also got to attend the Senior Leadership Collective, where we learned a lot about things that rec wouldn't traditionally deal with. Here in Mapleton, we aren't necessarily seeing all of the things that bigger cities are seeing, but for us to maybe think that we're not ever going to see things like homelessness in our parks, or maybe an increase of drug use, and how we are going to navigate through those things, because recreation, parks, and facilities traditionally don't deal with those things. It was a great opportunity to see what is happening in bigger cities and what we could potentially be looking for in ensuring that we have appropriate things in place. We had our Winter Wonderland camp this past year. It was great. It was held at the MCC, and we actually had snow, so it was really exciting to be able to do a Winter Wonderland camp and utilize the snow. We had our Family Day Fun Fair, which you are all aware of. It was a really exciting day. We had over 200 people come through the PMD. I don't think there were times you could squeeze another person on the ice at the arena, so that was fantastic. We are super grateful to all of the sponsors that helped make that day happen. It wouldn't happen without such fabulous businesses and community groups really helping us out. March break camp sold out. We actually opened a few additional spaces to squeeze a few more kids in. We like to ensure that we can get everybody in, or as many as possible. So it was fantastic. The children really enjoyed it, and it was a great week. Our public skating this year, Saturday nights picked up. There was a big increase in Saturday night public skating. I'm not sure if any of you had the opportunity to attend a Saturday night public skate, but they were very busy this year, which was wonderful to see. We were excited about that. I just want to give you a quick update about Live Barn. Live Barn has been able to come into the arena. The internet is hooked up and ready to go. All the equipment is there, and staff are excited to be moving forward and doing some training, hopefully very soon, so that we are up and ready to go before the ice is back in. This is just a list of some of the events that have taken place so far. So we did our youth dance. We had a great junior youth, which is new this year. Since January, we've had a few junior youth sessions, which has been great to get those kids out. We did do a grade 6 mix and mingle, our mini movers, another PD day, and we did a grade 2-3 event for Valentine's Day, which was Palentine's, so it was fun. Thank you. We have switched over to spring and summer pickleball, which means that pickleball is now out on the arena floor surface instead of in the hall. It allows us to open up 4 courts, which is fantastic, and just gives people more room to play, less waiting, more time to play, which is great. You will see a report in the future also about pickleball, so there'll be some more information coming forward. Line dancing, who knew? I stopped in last night to check it out. There was over 60 line dancers in the hall, so it was very well attended. So we will see what happens over the next few weeks. We were looking forward to seeing how that would go, so it was great that it was that well received. Summer camp is open. Our goal number for summer camp this year is we'd like to see at least 240 campers. We currently have 215 spaces spoken for. So we're going to keep plugging along. The numbers do look higher currently this year than where we were at this time last year. So we are really happy about that. We had our community cleanup. We are right now going through our media to see who our winners will be for their gift cards. Thank you. Any questions?
Wow. Okay. Community cleanup, yep, I was out there. It started raining on me. It was great. Got wet, got cold, fantastic. Really good to see the summer camp, how it's good. And you're right, line dancing, I've saw nothing but positive on social media, how fun it was. I thought about going, but my 2 left feet, I don't think it worked too well. Questions for Amy besides me rambling on? Anybody got something? Go ahead, Amanda.
Through you, Mayor. I just had a question for the wait list for before and after school. Are we limited by space? Or are we limited by staff? What creates that wait list for us?
Sure, absolutely. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Reid. We opened a few more spaces for next year. We are essentially limited by our ability to staff the program, and we would have to bring back a report to see, what council really wants that to look like and how large they want that to grow. At this point, it would just be a staffing thing. The school will, the Upper Grand District School Board will allow us to have as many rooms as we would like to have to run the program.
But we have enough staff members currently.
So we need to ensure the staffing, so that is always a tricky part. Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments? The Pro Expedition, where was that?
It was at Blue Mountain this year.
Okay. Horrible place to go. I'm glad you learned a lot there. It's certainly when I go to my FCM and through my county stuff, hearing about what the larger communities are dealing with when it comes to parks and as you were talking about homeless situations as well as drug use. So certainly, I'm sure your eyes were opened, as mine always are when we're having those discussions. Anything further? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I just want to comment on, I'm just always really blown away by just the diversity and the creativity of what events that are being put on for the community, and how rich that is, of bringing people out and being together and it's kind of what this community is all about. It seems to be really well received. All the graphic work and all the social media work to promote that and bring people in has been, there's always something there to look for and do, and it's, I think it's really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ensure that our team knows that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything further? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Item number 10. Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Martin, that bylaw number 2024-023, being a bylaw to adopt and set the tax rates for 2024, be hereby ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 14th day of May, 2024. Questions? Heather's here to answer everything you have. Setting the tax rates. All right, all in favor? That's carried. Geez, Heather, really getting off her easy here. We'd have John like pulling his hair out, but apparently not you today. Correspondence for council information is there for you. Any comments on any of those or questions on any of those? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did anyone else get offended by 12.4? Because honestly, like, this admonishing, like, I'm sure she didn't write it. It was one of her staffers or interns that did. But she comes from a riding west of us. I think it's Huron or Bruce. You know, engaging with farmers as a title, like, you know, admonishing us not to, you know, charge the ag sector with stormwater, you know, fees, because they already tiled their land. But like, this is the same ministry that has refused to engage with us on our cheap food, you know, argument for like, what's it been, 10 years? Right? So same ministry. And she fires off a letter like this to a municipality telling us not to charge stormwater rates. Like, I really don't understand it. Like, it's confusing to me that this particular ministry, I can understand it from perhaps some other ministry, but like this ministry headed by her, you would think have a really good understanding of the amount of time and energy that we spend engaging with the ag sector, because that is Mapleton, let's be honest, right? And so I really find it confusing and probably offensive that we receive this type of letter. So can we like do a return to sender? Like, I don't, like, it really, I don't understand it. Like, the point's well made, but like, no offense, but we'd figure that out for ourselves.
And
Maybe that can be our next delegation.
next delegation with Minister Lisa Thompson. I'd put you right at the front there. Okay. Manny, at the next council meeting, we'll have a report saying how we're going to increase all these fees for everything, and then we'll send it to her. Okay? Maybe not.
That one I'd like a motion on.
Maybe not, yeah. No motion coming our way, not happening. Okay, anybody else that's offended by any of these? All right. Moving on then, any notices of motion? Other business, number 15. Go ahead.
Just to comment on the last weekend of the garbage cleaning that went on in the community. During this last week as well, we had a whole bunch of high school students out with trees from Mapleton, and the local Girl Guides from Drayton and Alma as well, planting just on the river's edge down by the cemetery. And probably, I think it's over 300 quite large trees went in during those 2 days, with all those young folks making our township more beautiful.
So that's why you were walking with a little bent over after all those trees being
Yeah.
planted.
There was a lot of digging,
It's a lot of digging.
some heavy soil there.
You didn't let us know you were doing planting of trees. We could have all come out and helped a little. Huh? Right? Anything else on other business? I know that Marlene and I went to the OSUM in Aurelia. We had some good learning there. Marlene, any comments to that? I know I sent it out to everybody, that information. You able to click in and get into it? I hope. Okay. Good?
Can't do that. Everybody goes to the same sessions, so the speakers are really engaged with the whole crowd there, and I quite enjoy that, and I find that quite often they're very good speakers, and you got to stay right till the end, because the speakers are good right till the last minute. And yeah, a lot of talk about homeless and encampments and things like that too, and it really makes you think about what might come in our own community yet, if it's not already here.
Thank you. Okay. If there's nothing further, we'll need a mover and seconder to go into a closed session for the purposes of speaking to a matter of legal matters to the township. Mover, Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Tamlin. All in favor? That's carried. We're now going into close. We'll have a 10-minute recess.